Is this the right step? I'm on the right step? Excellent. So we're going to do a little activity first because you've been sitting down a long time. So it's a tricky activity. You're going to explain to the person next to you how you're feeling, what your emotional feeling is, without using any emotion or feeling words. So you're only allowed to describe your body. So an example could be my throat is tight, my chest is tight, and my hands are clammy. And the person that you're doing this to is going to guess your emotion. Okay? And then I'm going to distract you by getting you to stop so I can get on with the talk because, you know, we've got a lot to cover. Okay? Have a go. And don't cheat and say you got a parking ticket on the way here. Okay, told you I was going to make you stop. Need to stop. I know. You can tell they're not school children because they just keep talking. And then they want their children to be compliant. Make a big noise. Can't make a big noise. I'm not a big noise person. Thank you, Wen. Okay, who found that easy? Anyone find that really easy? No? Excellent. Anyone find it impossible? Excellent. I love my autistic tribe. So when we think about emotions and behaviour, it can be very difficult for lots of children for lots of reasons. And it can be more difficult for children with disabilities to manage behaviour than it can be for other children. And it can be also more difficult for children with trauma. And one of the things I find really difficult as a person who has a disability but is not disabled is that I don't like hearing things about my disability that sound negative. I don't like thinking that, you know, just being autistic is traumatic, but actually it is. Because the world isn't set up for me. And if you use a wheelchair and you're trying to access places all the time that aren't accessible, that's traumatic. So many of your children experience the world in a way that is similar to trauma. So if we're not really good at managing our behaviour, often we're not signalling our behaviour. So I look quite calm until the second I explode, which is not very helpful. And that's the same for many children with disabilities, whether they're on the spectrum or not. But this is because we don't actually recognise our own emotions. We're not good at recognising our emotions. So we can empower you to empower your children to recognise and express their own emotions. Why is it that disability impacts the ability to express emotions? I'm going to do this super quick. Basically, because people with disabilities have more mental health issues than people without disabilities, because the world is harder for us. So as parents, you want to make the world easier for your children so they're not part of these statistics, but not too easy in case you don't enable them to make those decisions and things when you're not there. It's a really hard balancing act. Disempowerment and disenfranchisement are really important aspects of this. So if you are a new migrant, or if you are one of the first Australians, you can be equally disempowered and disenfranchised. And if we are unity and we value each other equally, then that goes away. But it's really important to understand that that can impact your ability to connect to yourself if you're disempowered and disenfranchised all the time. And if connecting to ourselves is that big word, interception, it's my favourite word, I use it a lot. And when we can't connect to ourselves, when we don't have that interception, we can't manage our emotions. And then we get further disenfranchised and further disempowered because people don't like the way that we behave. One of the reasons for this is that there are biological pathways around stress. So the more stressed you are as a person, the harder it is to connect to yourself accurately and manage your behaviours. Okay? So this is not a person's fault. We all know that person that explodes all the time for no reason. There is a reason for them. And when we look up there, it says perceived threat. Doesn't have to be a real threat. Doesn't have to be the saber-toothed tiger jumping out. For some children, the colour yellow is enough to send them over the edge. Who knows why? It's a perceived threat for them. Okay? And it's really important that you understand perceived threat is real for your individual child. So it's about understanding what those perceived threats are, helping them to connect to themselves accurately so they can interrupt that cycle of the red and move on to the green. These are in your pack, so you don't have to be able to read them. It's okay. Now, there's hope. Even if you have intergenerational trauma, so your child has intergenerational trauma or your child has a traumatic life, which leads to lower connection to self, leads to lower well-being, we can change that. Or rather, more effectively, you can change that, because parenting, good enough parenting, is the most important thing. With good enough parenting, we have secure attachment. When you love and value your child, and you give them clear, fair expectations and boundaries and rules, that in itself is the most amazing thing, because it leads to increasing connection to self and increasing well-being. That's super powerful. Now just blink for a minute and miss all the red arrows, okay? Excellent. Okay, how can you help your children to connect to and express their emotions? Number one is develop this interceptive awareness that I keep going on about. When they've got that, which I'm going to explain next, develop awareness of their emotions as they're developing. How many of you have got those really great children that are super expressive when you want them to go to bed and they don't want to? And you know they're too tired, but they don't know, right? Yeah, this is what we're talking about, being able to change that for you and for them. And then to support your children and young people while they're developing the skills. This is not a magic wand that you go, great, you connected to yourself. Now when I tell you to go to bed, you're going to go, yes, because I'm tired. Doesn't work like that. You still need to support them through it to get to that final part of self-managing and self-regulating. And that is still never 100%. I want you to think about, have you had an argument in the last month? Yeah, put your hand up if you had an argument in the last month. Okay, so you have failed at self-managing and self-regulating. Okay? So this is not a 100% thing. This is just about being able to do the best you can do when you can do it. And the rest of the time being able to be co-regulated. So when the person you were arguing with said, you know, you're right, I was wrong, that you don't continue the argument. That you can be co-regulated. So interceptive awareness is a fabulous thing. It is our connection to all those internal signals. And you probably can't see them at the back. I don't think this is a fabulous screen. I've got on here heart, kidneys, bladder, skin, hormones, immune cells, bone, intestine, stomach, lungs, but it's actually everything inside you. So, you know, when you want something really badly, and you can feel that fluttering inside. That feeling of that fluttering, that's your interceptive awareness. Now, when you haven't got good interceptive awareness for your hormones, you might not notice that you're in love or in lust with someone. You might think you've got food poisoning. Okay? So it's a very practical, useful thing too. Many of you, the first time you kind of notice this lack of interceptive awareness is around bladder and bowel control. Children with disabilities tend to toilet train much later in life. We don't read those signals very well. And this is great to notice with autistic adults because we're quite open about it. Need to go now. And we have to go right then because we only noticed that we needed to go when the signal was really big. And when that happens to your children and young people, it can be a problem in school if they're not allowed to go. Because then they'll stop drinking and eating so they don't have to go. So this is one of those reasonable accommodations under the law, the Disability Standards in Education, that your child be allowed to go to the bathroom when they request or when they run out to go. So there are a couple of ways of thinking about interception that are not that huge, nasty word that people don't like saying. It's from the Latin interioception, so mindful body awareness, biofeedback. It's just that messaging from our body. And we know that it's broken when you have extreme trauma, because you don't want to feel that extreme trauma. So I was in a car crash a long time ago, and I don't remember what the car crash felt like at all. I was in no pain after the car crash despite being injured. However, I was very worried about my cake. There was a cake in the car, and I really wanted to know where my cake was. And that's the brilliance of the mind. It disconnects. However, it's also the problem of the mind, because enough disconnecting and you don't recreate those connections unless you teach them explicitly, which we can do. We can get those connections back together. And when you connect to self, then you can connect to others. There is a part of the brain, it's in the insula, and this is the interception center of the brain. That's the bit that notices it all, puts it all together and processes it. Now, if it's not yet fully developed, it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter whether you're verbal, non-verbal, whether you use a wheelchair or whether you don't, you are about 6 to 18 months old emotionally. Okay? Now think about it. When your toddler cries or yells or screams, would you manage that differently than if your 16-year-old does that? Yeah. But often our 16-year-olds with disabilities are actually only 6 to 18 months old if they can't self-regulate frequently and often. And this is kind of a big game changer in the way that we will manage them. Now, you can do things that look like self-harm but aren't. That often happens with these children as they hit their teenage years. And it's a desire to feel. If you don't feel your body at all, you'll do things to try and make yourself feel. You can behave in ways that are perceived of as challenging. But actually, that's your biological response to that perceived threat. Remember we had perceived threat at the beginning? So if the teacher says to me, do maths, or my parent says, go to bed, and that's a perceived threat, my biology and my neurology go into fight, flight, freeze, flop, drop mode. And that's it, I've lost it. Okay? How do we know if a child has interception or not? Let's have a look. If you don't yet have it, bowel and bladder is the biggest one. Temperature awareness. Okay, I have no thermoregulation, which is very annoying. I don't know I'm hot until I'm boiling, and then I'm angry. I get really angry when I'm hot. This is not very useful, but it's a good way of knowing I don't have good interceptive awareness. If your children and young people get dressed in the thickest sweater and it's 40 degrees, they're not having good interceptive awareness for temperature. And you're such lovely people. You'll say, aren't you hot? And what do they say? No, because if they were hot, they wouldn't have worn that thick jumper. They don't know they're hot. So their body is still hot, except for a few people who have medical conditions that mean that they perceive temperature differently and process temperature differently. It's explaining to them your face is bright red and you're sweating. This means you're hot. If you take your sweater off, you will cool your body down. And in Australia, it's vital we don't overheat. And if you're going to go on holiday to New Zealand, where I'm from, it's vital you don't get too cold. Okay, both of them will kill you. So we need to equip our children for this. But explosive behaviour is the one that most people think about. I actually worry about the other side of that, the internalising where nobody expresses anything, because that is much more problematic in terms of long-term mental health. So, I love Inside Out. It's my favourite. When your interception is atypical or developing, so for all toddlers and your very young children, this is what we see. Yeah? Their emotions control them. We say, teachers love to say, oh, they went from 0 to 100 like that. What is that 100? Is that flipping your lid, losing it? Meltdown, sometimes called in the autistic community, or shutdown. I don't like those words because it sounds like it's an autistic thing that's not real. It's actually part of our biology. It's that sympathetic nervous system. It's our survival instinct. When our survival instinct kicks in, that's what it is. But it's often perceived of as challenging behaviour. And I like to think I was a good teacher because I was a terrible child with lots of challenging behaviour. But now I know I just couldn't self-regulate. I didn't know when my emotions were coming, couldn't do something about it, and then they got huge. So I'm going to teach you all the hand model of the brain. It's not mine, it's Dan Siegel's. That's a very nice line drawing, which is very boring, so you have my much nicer picture. So you can teach your children and young people this, and every school that we've taught this to has taught this to their children and young people, and it's made a huge difference to understanding behaviour. So this is your spinal column, and this is your brain stem. Okay? Your hand, when it's open, that's where the reptile brain sits. That's our ancient brain. That's what keeps us alive when all else fails. It's also the bit that makes us do the fight, flight, freeze, flop, drop. Your thumb, fold your thumb over. Your thumb is the emotional part of your brain. When your hand is like this, the emotions are in control. Okay? We're going to fold the fingers over. That's your thinking cap of the brain. Okay? And when that is connected, and only then can you think and make choices. Okay? And these little bits here that are jammed in, that's our mindfulness. That's our present in the moment, actually processing, okay? So we want kids like this so they can express themselves well. But what we get often is this, that big emotions, where the emotions are in control. And unfortunately, that's quite stressful. So then we get this, and then we get those explosive or those hidden behaviours. Does that make sense? Yep. I'm going to quiz you on it at the end, okay? So that reptile, it's not just fight, flight and freeze, which a lot of people think, but it's also that shut down or that flop and drop. And I really love flopper droppers. I love my flopper droppers. Has anybody got a flopper dropper? Yeah? Aren't they spectacular? Right? People don't understand that's a biological driven behaviour. That's a survival behaviour. That is not them being annoying. But boy, it looks annoying. And the freeze looks annoying too. My lovely brother-in-law, who has Down syndrome, he's a flopper dropper, isn't he? He doesn't want to do something, he just throws himself to the floor. And we think that's an avoidant behaviour, but actually he's so overwhelmed with not wanting to do it that he flops and drops. It's not a choice. So this is my second favourite picture. Don't worry about this. You can get this for free and all the bits that go with it, and I'll tell you how at the end. What this is here is a seesaw, and this is our autonomic nervous system. So that's our biology that drives that fight or flight. And it's just a picture that puts it together with a hand model of the brain. And if you're having problems with schools, this is a great thing to take to show them. When your child is doing that really extreme behaviour, they're in survival mode. They're not thinking. They can't make it a choice or a B choice, which I don't understand anyway. But anyway, these are available free on the Department for Education South Australia website. So you can get everything that's a diagram on there. Now, if we're going to teach interception, we've got to remember that basic human biology at the background. That's there. We can't change our human biology. Firstly, I need to be aware I have internal body states. I need to be aware that there's something for me to connect to. When I am connected to each of those individual things, then and only then can I have feelings and emotions and access those correctly. So if I have a funny feeling in my tummy, am I in love? Do I have food poisoning? Do I need the bathroom? Am I getting my period? What is it? I don't know. I need to have a number of different feelings in my body. I need to connect two or more. And then I need to be aware that things outside me impact me. Okay? Now, we've all had the child that says, I want to wear that outfit, or insists on wearing that outfit, and it's completely wrong for the weather. That's a good learning moment. Instead of saying, no, you can't wear it, when you go outside and they're in their singlet and gumboots, it's a family thing, then as they go blue, you can say, you might need to put that sweater on now. You've gone blue, it's cold outside, and that's making your body too cold. So use them as learning points rather than just saying no. So, when you have atypical facial expression and body language, and you know that when your kids, other people don't understand them, but you do, because you're used to them, it's that atypical facial expression and body language, but also motor movements and motor planning, because we actually need to read our body signals to know when we're going to move. So I have really good interception for when I'm about to have a tic, which is really annoying because I have a really big arm movement that I can't actually prevent. It would be great if I didn't know it was coming, except when I'm driving. So it's good that I have it. But I don't have it for everything, and I can't plan all the time. When you're thinking, how do I feel? You're thinking, what emotion am I feeling? Someone without interception is thinking, how do you feel? Okay? And we teach our children, don't we, with emoticons. I have no idea what half the emoticons mean. Like, who knows what that feels like? Okay, we use words, but we need to know what they mean, how they feel. Now, this is really important. If you can't feel, how do you know how you feel, and how do you connect yourself and others? But also, how can you connect to country? And when people have their connection to country broken, it breaks something inside too. And if we can fix the inside, I can't fix the connection to country, but then I can help them to connect to where they are presently. So this works for every culture and every people's in the whole one human race. But we can only self-manage and self-regulate when we're connected to ourselves and others and the land on which we are. So, remember that thing about the toddler, that big emotion's getting bigger and bigger and bigger until you do something about it? Yeah? Well, toddlers just do that screaming thing. It's quite good. But we can do something about things before it gets to that point. So, because I had that big thing earlier with my seesaw, you can only be getting stressed or calm, can't you? You can't be getting stressed and calm at the same time. Anybody ever had a screaming row where they're getting calm during it? No, doesn't happen. We need, however, to be a little bit stressed in order to actively learn, but not too much. And for some children, and most children with disabilities, that line between a little bit of stress that's good and too much is quite thin. Yeah? It's okay to get it wrong sometimes as parents. It's okay. So, we can feel our heart beating faster or slower when we're connected to ourselves. We can feel our breathing getting faster or slower. I can't tell you exactly what my heart rate is. And in fact, I'm really bad at this. Even though I've got good interoceptive awareness for some things, I think I'm having, really high anxiety. And for a long time, I wore a smartwatch so that when I was in a meeting, I could look at it. And if it was over 110, I would not speak because I can't filter when I'm anxious or stressed or angry. And people don't like it when you don't filter when you're a senior public servant. But they think that you're listening if you don't talk. So, all the activities that I'm going to talk about in this are in this book, which is free to download from the Department for Education. Okay, it's called Ready to Learn. There's an interception webpage. All the resources that I talk about are free on that. So please do download them, print them off for yourselves. If you want to know how to use them, there are some videos on how to use them on a YouTube channel called Healthy Possibilities. So don't have to make lots of notes or anything. We need to rewire the brain effectively, because the brain is not wiring as optimally as we would like. So we have to do these activities 2 to 3 times a day so that we rewire the brain so it works to the top it can work, and then we can start to monitor our own emotions and manage ourselves. Okay, we're going to do an example. You've got to put everything down, all right? You don't have to stand up though, you can sit down. Just with your shoulders relaxed, just feeling how that feels. Just feel how you feel with your shoulders relaxed. Now, I want you to raise your shoulders up to squish your ears. It's quite uncomfortable, okay, it's meant to be, and just hold it like that for a little bit, okay? Hold it, hold it, hold it. Now, if you have an injury, do this very slowly. If you don't, you can do it fast, and drop. Can you point to where you felt a difference between when your shoulders were up and when they were dropped? Okay, we had back of the neck here, we had the top of the shoulders, we had around the neck. Okay, so there's quite a few different places. That's good. We're all different. We're meant to feel things in different places. There is no right and wrong when you do this. But the person here was quite explicit. They felt it across here. So we're going to do it a second time, because you always do an interception activity a second time. And this time when we raise it up, we're going to feel here. Okay, so raise it up and see what you can feel across the top of your shoulders. And keep it up, keep focusing on that, and drop, and focus. Did it feel tense when it was up or when it was down? Up. Awesome. That is an interception activity, okay? It's really simple. You're noticing a body change, actively noticing. So, when we do this, over time, it helps us. The actual activity is amazing, because when we do it, remember in the hand model of the brain, I said this bit here that's smushed in, that's your mindful awareness. When we did that noticing, we were mindfully noticing. So if we were a bit stressed or a bit anxious, we brought that down to being our thinking cap of the brain on, so that we could use our mindful awareness. And when you're in this state, you're calm, and you can learn, you can make choices. So doing these activities doesn't work when you're here, okay? This is no good, just leave them alone. But as long as the emotions are there, you can bring it down by doing interception activities, okay? This is another one. I like these ones, the breathing ones. I want you to just sit and gently breathe through your nose, only your nose, and I want you to see if you can feel the breath on your nostrils, okay? If you can't feel it on your nostrils, see if you can feel it on the top of your upper lip. And if you do lots of meditation and you're really good at this, see if you can feel it going up and down your nose. Okay. Who felt their breath? Quite a few of you. Now, in doing that, can you feel how calm the room's got? So we do this. I just got an email last night from my team, and there are over 200 schools and preschools doing this in South Australia. And we use this as a strategy to help people connect to themselves, to learn to manage their emotions, but also recognize their emotions. So this is another really, really simple one, because sometimes parents think teaching children to behave is really hard, particularly with the NDIS, where behaviour management is just such an expensive thing. And I really should change my job. But you can do this. So this one I particularly like. I worked with an adult autistic, and when they got very anxious and stressed, they were normally using speech, and they were unable to use speech when they were stressed and distressed. We would do this activity together. So we just got a regular hand, and then we're going to stretch it really, really wide, really focusing on that hand. Okay, hold it a little bit longer, and then squish it. Right. Now, who preferred the stretch? Okay, and who preferred the squish? Okay, do which one you prefer, and I want you to really notice how the back of your hand feels. Okay, and if you can't feel the back of the hand in your preferred position, try shifting your hand around a little bit. Okay, go. Who felt the back of their hand more the second time? Yeah. That's your interceptive awareness, being guided to notice something. Every time we did this for 30 seconds, this lady was able to use speech again because it calmed her down that much. Okay, so it's quite powerful stuff, and you can teach this to your kids. Because as we have that big emotion, if we don't do something about it, you're going to do this. All right? And that's what happens for most kids with disabilities. And then, unfortunately, sometimes that's seen as, well, that's their way of communicating, so we won't stop them doing that. But what that does is stop them having friends, stop them being employed, and stop them being seen as equally valuable. So we need to help them have these skills. So, with good interception, when you're tired, you know to go to bed. How many of you, I'm not going to ask you to put your hands up, are not in tune with when you need to go to bed? Quite a few. Okay. So, that makes it hard, doesn't it? Because then you don't have the right amount of sleep, and then you're more grumpy the next day. Also, with poor interception, we can have those kids who sit there blue and they don't know they're cold. But are you going to be well behaved when you're freezing? No. With good interception, that person would know to either come out of the cold freezing wind or put gloves on. So when we start to go down this journey, we don't just need to learn to connect to ourselves, we need to learn what to do about it. If I feel like there's a heaviness here and a tightness here, I need to learn that that's when you go to the toilet. If I feel a bit dry here inside, I need to know that's when you drink. Yes! Okay? Because we can associate things like that for children and young people. Without it, there's no point in knowing how I feel if I don't know what to do about it. And it's okay to be angry. This does not teach you not to be angry. It teaches you not to hurt other people when you're angry. Because anger is a good thing. So, adults can learn this too. I have a lovely team. I'm so blessed with my team. And we fly all over South Australia to support schools around South Australia. And one of my team is very, very afraid of flying. So she does interception on the plane so that she doesn't freak out. And I know this works because I was on one of these little baby planes going to a regional centre, and we'd flown around 3 times in massive turbulence. And they said, one more try and then we're going to fly back to Adelaide. And I started to panic because I didn't believe they'd be wasting that much money on fuel, and I didn't think we'd have enough fuel. But I can't lose the plot on the plane, can I? Because it's a small regional town and everyone knows everyone. And, you know, they'll never listen to that person from the department who freaked out on the plane. So I did lots of interception on the plane, which enabled me to calm down and look fine. And over time I was fine. Because you do it long enough and you're activating that, which is activating the calming neurochemicals in your brain. So even as adults, we can prevent our anger turning to rage. Who has road rage? I mean, you live in Sydney. You've got to have road rage, right? Adelaide, we don't have much traffic compared to here. And I use it for road rage. So I do a breathing activity at every set of traffic lights. How hard is that? When you model this to your children and young people, what you're modelling is we all have difficult emotions and we can all manage them safely. Because as parents of children with disabilities, it is hard and you lose the plot too. I know I did as a parent. I'm not the best parent on earth by any shape, means or form. I'm a good enough parent. And all we need to be is good enough. Don't think you need to be perfect. So when we can connect to ourselves, this normally would develop across a lifespan. So if you were born into a lovely, loving family who didn't have any poverty, any stress, as you got older, your interception would get better and better and better. Now, think about those old people who notice every ache. They have fabulous interception. Okay? This gets interrupted if you have trauma. It gets interrupted if you're born with a disability. It gets interrupted if you were born with intergenerational trauma. But anybody can develop it just through doing those kinds of activities 2 to 3 times a day for 1 to 5 minutes at a time. Okay? It's really, really not hard. It builds empathy and it builds social connection. I worked with a lovely young lady and I said to her, how do you know when you're getting sad? And she said, that water stuff runs down your face. She had no idea if that was a comfortable or uncomfortable feeling. And is that when you're getting sad, does that happen? Is that a getting sad? Or is it a I'm already sad? Or is it also, I'm laughing so much I can't stop crying? She didn't know the difference because she didn't have a connection to herself for those feelings. And if you don't have that connection, this is what we see often in autism. We see kids that can rote learn, give someone tissues when they're crying. But they don't necessarily know that's a sad thing, as in an uncomfortable feeling. We also have autistics that feel everybody's feelings in the room, but they don't know what to do with it. And this is all around connections and empathy. And empathy supports friendships. So if you are the person who is kind and caring and compassionate, everyone who's nice wants to be your friend. And there are unkind people in the world, and it's a good learning opportunity for our young people to say, well, that person that wasn't nice to you when you were nice, you don't want to be their friend anyway, because they're still learning about being friends. They still need to learn how to be friends. And those statistics right at the beginning about how appalling the stats are for mental health for children with disabilities and adults with disabilities, friendships are the biggest protective factor, whether it's with a parent, with a peer, with somebody from school. People who think you matter and who treat you as if you matter and as if you care, and they care about you, are the single biggest protective factor against mental health difficulties. So we can't have that just because you care if they're not connecting back. So we have to activate these brain systems. We've been doing this for 18 months. We did 18 months of formal research, and then we did another 2 years more of informal research. And we know that when people do this, children and adults, they all connect better to themselves, to each other. And what we call in education pro-social behaviour, which means being nice, improves dramatically. So if I don't know that I hurt somewhere, I'm not going to go and get help. If I don't go and get help, that hurt is not going to go away magically. And if I keep hurting, I'm going to get grumpier and my behaviour is going to get worse. So if we can fix that by knowing I hurt somewhere, and the single biggest cause of challenging behaviour in autism is constipation. Constipation is very painful, but if you haven't got interceptive awareness of that pain, you don't feel it. So this is not just about emotions, it's very much about feelings as well. So please download the free book. I will be selling other non-free books, but I'm a big free person. So download the free book and we'll be outside at lunchtime and afternoon tea in the quadrangle selling our books. Thank you.
Would you please join me in waving your hands in the air in thanks to Dr. Emma Goodall?